Hey there, we're Talia and Ophira Edut, identical twins and astrologers. Welcome to AstroTwins Radio, where we bring the stars down to Earth. You know those times when everything goes haywire and you can't figure out why? Look up, stargazer. A planet could be retrograde, meaning that from our vantage point on Earth, it appears to be spinning backwards. I'm Tali from the AstroTwins, and this episode is your guide to what the heck a retrograde actually is. So, what's really happening when a planet goes retrograde? Well, the Earth is completing its orbit around the sun faster or slower than the other planet. And, periodically one will outpace the other, and that's when retrograde mayhem breaks loose. When a planet passes the Earth in its orbit, or vice versa, it's said to be going retrograde. And really, from our vantage point here, it does appear that the planet is moving in reverse. And in the zodiac, it will back up through the signs. Yes, it is an illusion, but kind of like two trains passing at different speeds, one appears to be going backwards. So think of the prefix re when planning the best use of a retrograde. Review, reunite, reconnect, research. Retrogrades may not be the best times to begin something new, but let me tell you, they can be stellar phases for tying up loose ends or giving a stalled mission a second chance to succeed. So unless you live under a hunk of fallen meteorite, you've probably heard about Mercury retrograde, that 3 times annual mayhem that occurs when the messenger planet passes the Earth and again appears to move backwards from our vantage point. So for 3 weeks, 3 times a year, sometimes 4 times, we really can blame every internet outage, petty fight, and canceled brunch plan on a spinning rock 48 million miles away. And yes, we do. Even die-hard astrology skeptics start to waver in their stances during Mercury retrogrades. It was written up in the Wall Street Journal, and our dad called us to ask about it. So there you go. But did you know that every single planet goes retrograde at some point? With the exception of Venus and Mars, the planets all have retrograde cycles every single year. And when those cycles happen, the qualities that the planet has associated with it in astrology, and every planet is an actor in the movie of your life that has a very specific role that it plays. The qualities will go backwards. Saturn retrograde, Saturn governs structures, time. You may feel like things get prolonged or delayed. You have to go back to the drawing board and redo your project plan. When Jupiter, the audacious, bold, adventurous travel planet, goes retrograde, you may have to tone it down a little bit and be a little less overarching, and maybe look at some of those bigger, grandiose goals you had and check them against a realistic timeline. I'm going to go through every single one of the planets, and give you just like a brief little something about what their retrogrades are, but let's talk about what retrogrades can be good for. So the prefix re means to go back. And again, retrogrades are a time to polish up projects that are already in the works or dig up ones you've set aside. It's a good time to go digging in those crates. Retrogrades do turn our attention to the past and can be cosmic grace periods when you can finish all the things you've started or strengthen your plans and ensure that you don't move forward on a shaky foundation. This is one that is, true for me every single time Mercury goes retrograde or Venus. Old friends, lovers, and past issues can resurface, but you do get a chance to reconnect or revise. It can be useful to resolve any arguments during a retrograde, revisit old ideas, research an idea, or renew a commitment. You can also tighten up your routines and your plans, and you'll be able to rock when the retrograde period ends. The mistake people make is thinking they should just push through the retrograde instead of at least hitting pause to assess and reflect. Okay, so Mercury retrograde, we talked about that a little bit. This is the planet of communication, transportation, travel, and technology. And it goes retrograde for 3 weeks, 3 or 4 times a year. So fittingly, during a Mercury retrograde, arguments and misunderstandings can rage. Plans may fall apart. Cars break down and computers crash suddenly. We always advise, and astrologers do, to back up your digital files before this period, postpone signing of deals where you can, and plan to repeat or explain yourself a few extra times. By the way, sometimes you just can't avoid having to move forward on things. It's almost like Murphy's Law. Every contract we've ever had with a media property or a bigger brand that we work with seems to come in during Mercury retrograde. And sometimes we even have to sign it, but we really do make sure to red line the heck out of it so that it's, and really review it. Those little, and even so, there's, you can never be without a snag. Now, love planet Venus goes retrograde every 18 months. And that can reveal any weak links in a relationship and bring back past paramours. It's, not always a great idea to get married during Venus retrograde or make any major relationship moves. Normally, Venus stays in a sign for 4 to 6 weeks, but during a retrograde, it'll go forward in the sign and then backward again and then forward. So it usually lingers in one sign or two signs that it goes back and forth and for 4 whole months. The retrograde itself lasts around 4 to 6 weeks, usually 6 weeks. And the tabloids are predictably peppered with celebrity breakups every single time. What actually happens during Venus retrograde is fascinating. Venus goes from an evening star visible in the night sky to a morning star rising before dawn. And there's this period where Venus turns invisible, disappears, in between, in the middle there. And it's almost like you're putting old issues to bed while Venus is retrograde, an evening star, wiping the slate clean and then starting fresh again. We have a great course called the Romance Reset that we always release during Venus retrograde, and it's helps you walk through that process. Now, Mars, the combat planet, is retrograde every 2 years for 2 months, and like Venus, because it goes backwards and forwards again, it winds up being, 4 times its regular length of time in a single sign or 2 signs. So usually about 9 months. It's a long time that it stays. It's not retrograde the whole time, but it just stretches out its time in that sign. So you're really dealing with this conflict or, passion or lusty, charged up primal energy in the very same area of life, and you're going to have to work through it. There's no running away from a fight while Mars is retrograde, but it can get really tough and stormy. There's no slamming doors and getting away. You have to deal. The outer planets, which are Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, go retrograde every single year, okay? 4 to 5 months of the year, they're going to be in snooze mode. When Jupiter goes retrograde, you can't just rely on luck alone. Jupiter's the gambler, the planet of good fortune, the traveler, expander. It's like you're not going to stop stretching and growing and taking chances, but you really want to make sure you're taking calculated risks. Saturn, when it turns retrograde for 5 months, Jupiter's 4 months usually. Saturn, the other ones are about 5. Saturn retrograde can feel like, oh my God, wherever you're being restricted and clamped down on, it's like you are going to have to deal with those barriers, those boundaries. It can be a real come to Jesus moment for people to have Saturn when Saturn turns retrograde, because you have to accept that learning the rules is going to be the first step to maybe changing them. So you have to work within the system, which can be annoying when you're a rebel, especially when Uranus, the system breaker, shake 'em up rebel, disruptor turns retrograde, often at the same time for 5 months. And that can also, bring a real like, wow, let's go back to our enclave, put our heads together, the rebel compound, and figure out how we're going to make that change to the world, maybe in a way that's more mature or long lasting or impactful. Neptune, the planet of illusions, retrograde 5 months too. It's a time for doing deep healing. Neptune's all about therapy, trauma informed everything. So you have a chance to go a lot deeper into the fog of your subconscious and do some shadow work. Same thing with Pluto retrograde, which rules our unconscious. You may really have to check yourself during Pluto retrograde because you just won't see things, just won't see. So, you may find yourself being more secretive or needing to strengthen your privacy policy, needing to protect yourself a little bit more. Again, if you think of the retrogrades as kind of insurance policies and grace periods, we just can't keep barreling ahead without doing the checks and balances and making sure that, we all, our actions do have an impact. Well, is it a positive impact? How are others affected around us? These are the moments where we get to go and, correct course and right size everything. So there's a blessing there. And there's power in that, in learning the retrograde. The sign that the planet is in will also color the way the retrograde works. So the planets are always orbiting through a part of the sky associated with one of the 12 zodiac signs. So Jupiter may be retrograde in Pisces, which means you're going to expand and contract in Pisces areas of life, your imagination. During the summer of 2021, Jupiter, which it rules our luck, our optimism, was in Pisces for a while, and it turned retrograde in Pisces, which is also the sign of illusions. And that was when, people were like, I'm vaccinated, I can go out and I can, be free. And then, of course, we got another wave of COVID during the retrograde where people had to actually realize that, and while it was not as deadly, we still weren't ready to jump the gun in that overarching way that Jupiter can go. Saturn was actually retrograde in Aquarius, a sign of social justice, during the summer of 2022, when all of a sudden statues were being toppled, but then there was a police crackdown on activists and activism. And so again, you can see the way things start barreling forward, and then the retrograde comes in and goes, wait, not so fast, or here's some opposition. How far are you going to go to push back? Or are you going to do this in a sensible way? But the sign is going to show the way it works itself out. And that's something that you can look at astrostyle.com, get our annual guides if you want to know what signs the planets are in. We track that for you every single year. You could get yourself an ephemeris and geek out with that. That's a map of where all the planets are in any given year. It's really a system. There's a lot to learn, but hopefully this will get you to a point of greater understanding of what happens when a planet appears to be going backwards in its orbit and how it just can be worked with for good, but also with a giant warning label that you'll want to watch. What's your moon sign, your big three? Where does every single planet fall in your natal chart at the time you were born? Well, guess what? You can find out all about that and read a comprehensive description at astrostyle.com/planets. We also have charts that you can do for free and paid reports that are a deeper dive that are available, and such a juicy thing to have for yourself, like the blueprint to your soul. Learn all about it and expand your cosmic knowledge at astrostyle.com/planets. As always, thanks for listening. You can discover more of your star power at astrostyle.com and be sure to follow us on social at AstroTwins. Join us next time for more cosmic fun.